Hi guys, Jennifer Nichols again from Bridges Counseling Center. I wanted to continue our discussion today with just a little bit more information about using no to create healthy boundaries with your kids. Another thing that I want to talk about very briefly today is also holding up those healthy boundaries by creating an adult-only space. Or drawing a line in the sand about what is a kid issue and what is an adult issue. These are things, both of these topics today are things that I have spent a lot of time over the years talking to parents about and encouraging them. So we'll first talk about using the word no. And I know we talked about it in my last video, but we did not talk about the desire or sometimes the practice of not saying no. Not using those words, maybe giving another thing that you think maybe sounds like no, but not drawing a hard line because you feel like it's harsh or stifles your kiddo. And so there are some children, and many of you are probably sitting there thinking, no way, Jennifer, but there really are some children that rarely ever hear the word no. And I know that some children will hear no more frequently than other children. As I mentioned in my last video, I have 3 children, and definitely some of them hear the word no more than others. I have one child who rarely hears the word no because by his very nature, the way that God created him, he's a very compliant child. He very much wants to please myself and his father. He wants to go with the program. And then my other 2 are varying degrees of challengers. They want to challenge the situation. They feel like there's always room for negotiation. And they're going to be great leaders someday. And I'm sure that my quieter one he will definitely be a great leader as well. However, just because some kids hear it more than others, you can't not say it. Children have to grow up. As stated yesterday, the home is that first environment. It's that foundational environment where kiddos learn how to interact with the world. They figure out who they are in relation to the rest of the world and what the rules are for interaction. And if there are no clear boundaries at home, they will grow up feeling that those boundaries don't exist other places. And that's where we have issues then later as adults. Maybe they come to therapy. Maybe they get in trouble with the law. Perhaps they have difficulty forming lasting, healthy relationships with others, be that a friendship, be that a marital relationship. So it's really important that they figure this out. So I want to encourage you. I know that sometimes it can feel like we do nothing but say no. So the way that we can offset that is, and it does take a little bit more energy than just flat out saying no, but it's telling them why. And that brings in a respect piece that most kids they'll appreciate and they'll go with. You say no, and because this, for this reason. You don't leave it up for discussion. You don't leave it up for debate. That's a little bit harder with one of my other kiddos that really likes to argue. And I have to remind myself what I would tell a parent in my position, which is you got to cut that convo off because it's just going to be circular and it won't stop. So it's a little bit harder when it's your own kid, even when you're a therapist and you have degrees that have taught you countless continuing education hours that have taught you otherwise. So I hear you and I understand. But again, it is very important. So we make sure that we are saying no, that kids do feel no, they hear it, they understand it, and then you give them the reason why. No, and this is why. No, and this is because why. So that's the first part that I kind of wanted to talk about, because we didn't really address the fact that there are some parents that struggle with even saying no to begin with, right? So that also can come into play when there are divorces, when there are kiddos that are living in 2 different homes. That's where kids can get their boundaries just all out of whack because one parent or both parents feel very guilty about the divorce. Perhaps it was even a wonderful divorce, if there is such a thing, where they got along and there wasn't mudslinging or using the kids as weapons against each other. But still, we carry around this guilt about, gosh, I just feel so bad that this happened. And so then we try to overcompensate for that guilt by either not saying no or overindulging the child, maybe loosening boundaries that really are and need to be in place for safety and security purposes. So if you're one of those parents that is struggling with that, I encourage you to please get on the same page with your ex and figure out, okay, these are the things that are going to be across the board, what our kid is going to be expected, what our home is going to be like. Even though our homes now are in two different places, this is what life is going to look like here, and it will also look like over there. And again, I'm not naive. I have spoken with literally just so many parents who just say, I can't talk to my ex. I can't talk to them. We only communicate via the phone, or maybe we text, or there are even apps I have found out from working with parents for parents who can't speak to one another in a civil way. So I encourage you, even if you're the lone wolf on this, even if you're the only one that is treating your ex, your child's parent, your child's other parent, as a human with respect and positive regard, even if you're the only one, I challenge you to keep trying to do that, because they're watching everything that you do. And we are so bad about leaking our feelings to our kids when we don't even intend to. Some parents actually do intend to leak those feelings, and that's another boundary that I'm going to be talking about next, about creating that adult space. But really and truly, it's important for kids to hear no. It's important for parents to be on the same page about what are the boundaries in this family. Even though maybe we're a split family, it's important to have similar boundaries. It's so difficult. Try to put yourself in your child's place and think about what life would be like for you if you had to toggle between these two worlds where the rules were so epically different. It's difficult, and it would really challenge even the most able person with the most robust group of or collection of coping mechanisms to navigate. So then take that away, that you're not an adult going through this situation. You're a child whose prefrontal cortex will not be finished cooking, if you will, until about the age of 24. So I implore you, this is something that I'm very passionate about. And that is reconciling to some extent, where at least you can be civil and be able to set these guidelines for your kiddos who didn't ask to be born. They didn't ask for you to get a divorce, and they really are at the center of all of that. And at that point, you just have to decide, that's my main responsibility. This child that I brought into this world is my main responsibility, and I owe it to this child who asked for none of this to be the best parent that I can be. Even if my ex is not behaving in that way, I have to. And if everybody did that, my goodness, what a world we would have, truly. Okay, so be sure you're saying no. Be sure you're not avoiding no, really, I guess is what is a better way to state that. Don't avoid no for fear of hurting your kiddos. They need to hear it. They need to understand that there are clear boundaries in life, and it's totally encouraged to explain why the no. Why? Don't leave it up for discussion, but this is why. So the next part kind of is related to the first part, and that is creating an adult space. So very often I'll hear from parents that their child will overhear conversations. In the worst of situations, parents have divulged that they have given really some age inappropriate information to their children, not in a malicious way. Perhaps it is a divorced parent and they're feeling alone, isolated, on this trip all by themselves, and they find themselves sometimes oversharing with their kiddo. I caution you against that. In fact, it's a no. That's a no. I'll say a no for you. Kids have to be kids. I can't tell you countless number of conversations with kids, talking to them about what their job is. Their job is to be a kid. Their job is to have fun, to learn, to do their best, to be, good kids, to follow the rules and take care of themselves, but their job is not to worry about adult problems. So I caution you, don't overshare, don't parentify your child, don't allow them, because sometimes they see the weakness, they see maybe the sadness and the brokenness, and because they love you, they want to help. They want to step up. They want to take on more responsibilities. And there's a good part of that. Chores are fantastic, but when you cross over that emotional line of parent and friend, confidant, especially with younger kids. Now, if your kid is like 18, 19, 20, that's a whole different story. I'm really speaking to those parents of younger children. We're talking school-aged kids who are still trying to figure out what it's like just to be who they are. So they definitely don't need extra baggage or extra barriers in doing so. So make sure that you create that adult space. This is an adult problem. A great way to word that is, it's like the last 2 years of being a school counselor in Cy-Fair ISD, I focused really hard on explaining to the kids what a big problem and a small problem, what the difference between those two things are. Big problems are only for adults. Those involve things like hurting yourself, self-harm, someone else self-harming, someone else with suicidal ideation, you have suicidal ideation, molestation, abuse. Those are big problems that are too big for your peer, who is another kid, to handle. So that's when you have to find a trusting adult. And you keep telling until you get help. That's the message that I sent. Then there are the small problems, and those are okay to share with your buddies and your friends. Those are not going to become traumatic for the person who's listening to the problem. And that's the deal. We want to prevent vicarious trauma, and your kids can be vicariously traumatized by your oversharing, and then they can overshare with their peers, and then those peers become vicariously traumatized. Countless numbers of kids in my office over the years who are just in tears and beside themselves because of a story that a friend has told them of something that was very hurtful that happened to them. And their friend, not knowing what to do, then comes and finds me because they don't know what to do with that. They're not able to help in that position. It's beyond their ability. So teaching kids that there is a huge difference between a big problem and a small problem. Big problems are only for adults. And when I'm talking to my husband about things like bills, the mortgage, death, about, violent deaths that are happening all around the United States, those conversations are just for adults. It's very good to keep your kids aware of, we need to be a more tolerant society. We need to accept people for their characters and for who they are and have nothing to do with their skin tone. Those are messages from right now that are absolutely necessary for you to give to your children. But talking about the bloody details of all the rioting and the murders, that's a lot. That's a lot for a kid to handle. So it's important for kids to know pieces, right? You have to make that call as a parent. What is appropriate for my kid to know? Things that are of adult nature, those are for me and my partner. And if they're not, then my kiddo doesn't need to hear that. And some kids are pretty nosy. I've had many, many parents talk to me about, I'll try to talk to my partner about these things, and they're lurking around the corner. My kiddo's lurking around the corner trying to listen. And that's where you have to set those boundaries of, these are not conversations for you. This is a conversation for us, and we're going to go in a private area and have that conversation. So these are important boundaries that help not only protect your kiddo from vicarious trauma, but they also are going to help them just have a happier life. There are things they don't need to know right now. The world is going to teach them really sad and awful and traumatic lessons later on, but they're not equipped with the ability to process that information in a healthy way. And so we have to be the protectors of our children's hearts and minds. Okay, my next video is going to be a surprising topic, and it is going to talk about video gaming, which, if you know me, you know I am not a ginormous proponent of video gaming. However, my heart has kind of been changed by, I've been reading a book by Emerson Eggerichs called Mother and Son, and it's talking about the respect factor between parents and their children, especially boys. And I've really started to think differently about some things. He doesn't talk about video games in that, but it kind of helped put a spin on it for me that helps me to understand really the role that it might play in our society today. So, in the meantime, don't shy away from saying no to your kiddos. And please make sure that you have healthy boundaries set up around conversations and topics and subject matter to protect your kiddos from being vicariously traumatized by things that they are completely unaware of, unable to process. So parents, in the meantime, be brave, be kind, work hard. Teach your kiddos to be brave, be kind, and work hard. Have conversations at your house that speak life into your kids so that they can be brave, be kind, and work hard. Take care until next time.